So we are working the crown shaping on the top of the Milan hat. I have knitted the 12 inches or so that it wanted, and that is to allow for the hat to be a fold-up brim and a slouchy hat. It is a lot of fabric for a hat, so if you wanted something shorter, you could certainly do less. I'm going to show you both of the decreases that you'll need to know for this crown. Right now I'm finishing a row of decreases that has knit two togethers in it, and you can see that I've done several rows, so you will see they stack on top of each other, which allows the decreases to form a nice line on the top of the hat. So the first decrease I want to show you is the knit two together. It's a pretty simple one. It's probably the first one that everyone learns. And to work a knit two together, you simply put your needle through 2 stitches instead of 1 and work them as if you're knitting them normally and off onto the right needle. So let me show that to you again. You undo these. So you'll put your right needle through 2 stitches instead of 1 and wrap your yarn like you normally do and send it off. The next row has the other type of decrease that's in this hat, which is the purl two together. So let me get to that point and I'll show that to you. Pass my marker over. So the next row, we're gonna do a purl two together. So I'll bring my yarn to the front to purl. And we're gonna put this needle through 2 stitches as if you're purling. So normally you'd go through 1, we're gonna go through 2 instead. We're gonna wrap like you do for a purl and push it through the back. And let me show that to you one more time and get to the next point that needs a purl two together. And we come through 2 stitches here and we wrap as if to purl and pop it through. Now you'll notice that I have my double points here, and that is because we're getting to the point where the decreases are going to start to stretch these stitches around the circular needle. So when you start to see stitches stretched like this, you want to switch to your double point. So in a few more stitches, we'll probably would need to switch to the double point. So let me show that to you now. I like to knit onto my double points rather than to transfer and then start working again. So you'll start with your first double point and you'll keep working in pattern. And what that means is you'll keep doing what the pattern told you to do for this row, which is for this row I'm on is knit 1, purl 2 together. So instead of using my circular needle as the working needle, I'm going to use my double point. So I'm going to do knit 1 and purl 2 together with my double pointed needle. And this will start to work the stitches onto the double point and off of the circular. The double points allow you to do a very small circumference of knitting. So you can go down to just 3 or 4 stitches on double points and it's totally fine. Whereas on a circular needle, once you get so few stitches that things are stretched out, you really start to compromise the fabric. So you definitely want to switch to double points here, maybe 3 or 4 rows into this crown decrease, and you won't use them for very long. So if they're incredibly annoying to you, don't worry, you don't actually use them for a very long time at all, and they are necessary for the crown of a hat unless you're doing a magic loop method, which we are not demonstrating here today. All right, so I'm going to finish at the beginning of a repeat, and this is a good amount for this double point. It really depends on how many double points you're working with. I chose 4. If you choose 5, you'll have probably fewer stitches on each one, and it does not have to be the same on each double point. It really doesn't matter. So I'll start working with my next one. So my previous one is here, it stays on the needles, and I'm adding another one to the fabric. And you'll notice I'm having to keep pushing the fabric up off of that circular. As we get fewer and fewer stitches, you'll notice that the other end of your circular needle is getting very empty and long and starting to sort of hang out there. If your stitches are pretty consistent and not overly tight, but a consistent tightness, your stitches should not come off of your DPN, even though there's nothing keeping them from sliding. It's going to stay on there. You have a lot of stitches to kind of hold it on. So I'm going to work 3 double points onto this fabric and then knit with the 4th double point. As I said, you could use more. I like to use less. I think it's a little bit easier to manage with fewer. If you're using really small DPNs, you're going to need to use more of them because the stitches will fall off the ends. And this is what will go on to my last DPN. So grab that. And this will take care of the last of what was left on this circular. Again, working that purl 2 together for this row. Okay, so now I've reached the end of the row, but not the end of this needle. So I'm gonna need to keep working, but I'm gonna need to work the next row of fabric so that all of these stitches are worked off the circular onto the DP. So I had to check my pattern. So this next row is just knit 2 together. So like I said, I haven't worked all off of the circular. So even though I'm at the end of the row is actually gonna happen midway through this double pointed needle, and that really does not matter at all. So this row is just knit 2 togethers the whole way around, but after I get 2 of them done, I'll actually be off the circulars. The circular needle can go to the side. We're not going to use that anymore. Now what's really important here is that you don't keep working the stitches on this needle with this one we've been working with, because then you would end up on just 2 needles. You want to make sure that you pick up your 4th. And a good thing to remember as a new knitter is to never put this needle down, because if you put it down and you keep working with what's in your hands, you're going to end up working onto fewer needles. So you want to always keep this working needle in your hand. And what's interesting here is your working needle is going to keep changing. So right now it's the needle in my right hand, but as I work across this next needle, I'll be working all of these stitches onto that working needle, which will leave the needle in my left hand suddenly empty. So watch what happens here. So now this needle is empty. I move these stitches to the middle so they don't fall off, and I switch this to my right hand, and that becomes the working needle that I use to work the next needle. And that's how you work on double pointed needles. So you just want to be careful. You're always sliding your stitches to the middle of the needle so they don't fall off the edges. And kind of keep your tension consistent. If you're a really loose knitter, your needles will fall out, and that's why we recommended wood or bamboo to those of you that are new or have never used double points before. These are heavy vintage metal needles, so they're sort of the worst possible thing that you could work with, but fortunately I've done this before. All right, we're gonna get to our last, and then you'll see again that beginning of the round marker is midway through the needle, but you want to make sure that you switch to the next row of the fabric, even though you're not at the end of the double point. So now I start my next row. And then I'm going to show you how to finish off the cap when we've fully decreased down to the last number of stitches, so stay tuned. All right, so I have reached the top of the hat. All of the decreases are done. And you can see we've got like a little hole, and there's just a few stitches left. I am not through working this double pointed needle here, but I did reach the beginning of the round marker. So we can take that off now. And you'll notice that we have very few stitches on each needle. So things are a little awkward. I like to just put it down. The more in the air you raise it, the more likely you are to lose stitches here. And we're gonna cut the yarn, which I already did. We're gonna thread this tail onto a darning needle. And now we're going to run that darning needle through each of the stitches that's left from the hat, starting with the one that we would normally be knitting next. So I'm going to simply transfer the stitch on the double point onto the darning needle and pull the darning needle through it. So I'm going to try to keep things from falling. I just lost one. So with each stitch that you get through, you're going to free up another double point and be able to get it out of there. So run it through there and take this away. So you're basically transferring every stitch on the DPNs to this darning needle and thread instead. Freeze up another one. And this is going to sit under a pom-pom on your hat. So if you happen to twist these around or do something weird, it's not the end of the world. You're not going to see this. Okay, so now all of my stitches that were left are on a darning needle or thread. You could go through all of these stitches a second time, which will really help reinforce it if you wanted. This thread's pretty strong. I'm not going to pull super tightly, but it's pretty strong. So I pull that hole shut, and I'm going to send this needle down through the middle, and then I'll weave in my tail on the inside. Or you can weave it in a good bit, but then use it to maybe tie your pom-pom on if you want. I like to weave it in really well because if something does pop open on a hat, it's almost always this little spot. So on the inside of the hat, weave your tail in and out, in and out. You want to change direction a lot because that will keep it more secure and it will keep it from coming out. So up and down, in and out. We're just going to change directions a lot so that it's less likely to get pulled out. So the next video will show you how to make a pom-pom with the donut pom-pom maker, if you purchase that, or if you've got the faux fur pom-pom, that is super easy to attach. You're just going to feed the tails down through the bottom of the hat and tie it. I like to tie just a little bow so that I can transfer the pom-pom to another project if I want. It doesn't have to stay on that project forever. Okay. So we turn this back around, and there is the top of your hat. So as I said when we started, there's a good bit of length to this. The crown is very quick and very dramatic, but there's a ton of length, which will allow for the hat to be folded up and to be very slouchy. So the next thing that I would recommend that you do before you attach your pom-pom is to actually give this a good bath, a soak. You want to use something like Eucalyptus or Soak Wash, which is an environmentally friendly product that is almost like a conditioner for animal fibers. Put a little bit of it in the sink and soak your cashmere. You can rinse it out or you can actually leave it in, and then press it between two towels to get the excess water out, and then just lay it flat to dry. So you can lay it flat with the brim folded if you want, so that it's folded in the spot that you're going to want it when you're wearing it, or you can lay it completely flat and let it dry, and you can give that ribbing a nice bit of growth and expansion there when you block it out. You don't need to pin a hat, you don't need to do anything crazy, just let it dry. If it's really humid where you are, you can put a fan on it or a ceiling fan over it. And in the next video, we'll show you how to finish it off with your pom-pom. See you soon.